Welcome to ASMR 404Found, whispered horror from haunted trailheads. Like forest disappearances and creepy true stories. Subscribe now and don't look back. If you're heading out near the Klamath Pines this summer, especially near the old Lobo camp trailhead, there's something I need to tell you. I wasn't going to post this at all, I told myself. I'd forget it. I told myself it wasn't real, that it was just the altitude or dehydration or a panic attack brought on by being alone in a forest, where cell service dies the moment you lock your car. But that was before I started seeing the same trail on other forums. People saying they found it too. People saying they walked it. Some saying they never came back. My name's Ray. I'm a backpacker. I mostly do solo trips, and I'm cautious as hell. I don't stray off designated trails. I don't eat anything wild. I always leave a copy of my route. With my sister, I've never gotten lost in the woods. Not once. Not in Oregon. Not in Montana. Not in any of the places. I've hiked, but that changed. In California, back in late September. Had a week off from work, and I decided I'd knock Klamath National Forest off my list. The plan was 3 nights along the Lobo camp loop, a remote area with sparse traffic. I wanted silence. I wanted that heavy, deep forest hush that you only get when you're 10 miles away from anything paved. The kind that eats your footsteps and makes you hear your own heartbeat. First 2 days were fine. I camped near Lobo Lake. The trail was clear, no snow, yet not too dry either. Nothing weird, just typical forest smells. Pine decay, loam, birdsong. I saw a bear. The clear second morning way down in the trees just for a second. But that's not unusual. This is bear country, and it was far enough away not to worry me. The 3rd day, I got up early and packed fast. My plan was to do a long loop and head back south across the East Ridge to my car. I was feeling good, plenty of water, weather crisp, no wind, and I was making good time until I noticed something just a little off. About halfway through my hike, I saw another trail, one that didn't show up on my map. I know what you're thinking, deer trails, logging roads, game paths. I know them all, but this was none of those. It wasn't overgrown at all. It was narrow but clear, almost suspiciously clear. The pine needles had been brushed aside, like someone had swept it, and the trees on either side looked strange, like they were leaning in, just a little forming. A kind of canopy that made the trail look darker than the rest of the foresti. Should have ignored it. I should have kept walking, but something about it made me stop. Something about it made the air feel heavy. Not threatening exactly, but intentional, like it wanted me to see it, like it had waited for someone to find it. Stood at the entrance for what must have been 10 minutes, just listening, not moving. Even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. I remember hearing this odd thrum, like a low, pulsing beat somewhere far off. Not mechanical, more like a deep bass echo that you don't hear so much as feel in your chest than the birds. Stopped singing, I swear to God, all of them at once, like someone had hit mute on the forest, and the silence that followed made my stomach turn cold. I turned to go back, but something changed behind me. I didn't hear anything move, but the woods suddenly looked wrong. The trees behind me weren't the ones I remembered passing. Their trunks were too thick, too twisted. Their bark darker, almost black. And there was this smell, faint at first like warm meat left in the sun, but getting stronger. With every breath, so like an idiot, I stepped onto the new trail just to see where it went. I told myself just a few yards in it felt cooler instantly. I don't mean shady. I mean cold, like the kind of cold that raises goosebumps up your spine. The trees were thicker here, gnarled limbs hanging low and heavy with moss that swayed, even though there was no breeze. I kept walking, telling myself it was just a weird offshoot, maybe an old ranger path. Then I noticed the ground wasn't quite right. It looked like forest floor at first, but when I really looked, I saw impressions, not animal prints, not boot marks, but something else, longer, almost like drag marks, winding alongside my steps and then disappearing as if the trail itself had tried to hide them. That was when I started to hear breathing, not man deep, slow, raspy, and wet, like lungs that hadn't worked properly in years, like something half asleep and dreaming of air, and the sound came from all around me. Not one direction, not above, not behind it. Was like the forest had lungs. I turned around fast, and that was when I saw that the path I'd just walked was gone. Don't mean it had vanished. I mean, it was just forest now, untouched, moss, thick pine branches, no cleared path. Just trees and darken, that smell getting worse. Didn't panic, not yet, I told myself. I'd retrace my steps, take note of landmarks. I'm trained for this, right? But nothing looked the same, and the sky above was wrong too. It wasn't blue anymore. It was this dull, coppery red, like twilight, but too early, and there was no sun, just that red haze leaking between the branches. I started walking fast in what I thought was the direction I came from. My breath was getting short, and that weird thrum in my chest was louder now, not outside, but inside, like something was pressing on my ribs from within. And then I saw her. At first I thought it was another hiker, a woman standing very still, off to the side of the trail, only she wasn't standing exactly, more like hovering, her feet just an inch or two above the ground. Her hair was wet, long and black, and hanging over her face, and her arms were too long, elbows low enough to brush her knees. I froze. She didn't move, didn't make a sound. But I could feel her watching me, even through the curtain of hair. I took a step back, and she moved, not toward me, not away, just to the side, like she was sliding, and then she was behind a tree, and gone. That was when I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs buckled, and I dropped onto the forest floor, gasping and sobbing, and still the smell chased me. Meat rot, damp earth, and copper-like blood in your nose during a fever. And then it was quiet. Gaia didn't hear her move. I didn't hear anything at all, but I knew she was close. Closer than before. I heard a whisper, not with my ears, but inside my head, like something had crawled into my skull and peeled the thought from my mind state. I didn't stay, crawled to my feet, ignoring the way my knees shook and pushed forward, even though I had no idea what direction I was going anymore. I couldn't think about north or GPS or the map I'd packed in the side pocket of my pack. The Forest didn't follow maps. Here it wasn't made of trail markers and compass headings anymore. It was alive, and it wanted me off balance. The trees seemed to shift with me no matter which way I turned. The trunks were always slightly leaning toward me, crooked like they were eavesdropping and whispering, and their bark flaked in strips that looked disturbingly like old skin curling up at the edges. Then I tripped high. Didn't see what it was, but I hit the ground hard, my cheek smashing into wet soil, and when I pushed myself up, I saw it. Bones, not old brittle ones, not clean. These were fresh ribcage, half buried but unmistakable. Still pinkish and slick, like it hadn't been dead more than a day. And the worst part was, it looked humane. Screamed, or tried to, but nothing came out. Just this awful dry rasp, like the air had thickened into something unbreathable, and I scrambled back from the bones, trying to find something sane, something that still made sense. That's when I saw the carving. A tree just behind the bones had a symbol on it, carved deep into the bark, a shape I didn't recognize. Two curved lines crossing through a vertical slash and around it. The bark looked blackened, like it had burned from the inside out. Then something moved behind the tree. It was her, againly this time. I saw her eyes, and I wish I hadn't. They weren't eyes really. They were holes, or worse, spaces where eyes should be, only they were filled with teeth. Small, white, sharp teeth, twitching like they were chewing on the inside of her skull, and she was smiling, not with her mouth, with her whole face, like the skin was too loose, and her expression was being pulled from the corners by something behind E.T. Ran again, no thoughts, just instinct. Branches whipped at my arms, my pack snagged on something and tore, but I didn't stop. I didn't care about my gear. I just needed out, away, into anywhere that wasn't here. But it never ended. The trees just kept going, thickening around me, pressing inward, until I was nearly crawling, my hands scraping over moss that bled when I touched it. Not sap, real blood, warm and sticky and reeking of ironite. Was crying now, full body sobs, my chest heaving and throat raw. But it didn't stop the whisper. Close, she's waiting. Stumbled into a clearing finally, and nearly dropped to my knees with relief, because there in the middle was a cabinet. Small, old hunting cabin, maybe 20 feet wide, with a rusted tin roof and a chimney that looked like it had collapsed decades ago. The door was open, of course. It was. I should have turned and run back into the forest, but my legs moved without asking, and I stepped through the threshold. Inside, it smelled worse than outside: mildew, rot, and something else, like sulfur and decay. The walls were lined with shelves stacked with jars, all of them filled with things floating in cloudy fluid. Some looked like animal organs, but others were too big to human, and one was filled with teeth, dozens, maybe hundreds, packed so tight they pressed against the glass. There was a table in the center of the room, and on it a book, no dust. On it, opened to a page filled with the same symbol I'd seen carved on the tree, only this time it was drawn in red ink. Or maybe not ink, maybe something thicker. The text below, it wasn't English, not any language I knew, and the letters moved. I swear they writhed on the page like worms caught in light, trying to dig back into the dark. I turned to leave, and the door slammed shut behind me hard enough to rattle the walls. I didn't see anyone touch it, didn't hear footsteps. But she was inside now, standing. In the corner, bent backward at the waist, her spine arched in a way that no human should be able to bend, and her hands dragging along the floor, too long, too thin, with nails like claws, and her mouth was open wider than should be possible. Her jaw cracked to the side, and those teeth from her eyes were there too, lining the inside of her throat all the way down. I screamed. Finally, the sound tearing out of me, and she laughed, not with her mouth, with the whole room. The walls shook with it. The jars rattled, the air turned to mud in my lungs, and then she was right in front of me. Didn't see her move, she just blinked into place. She leaned in close and whispered one word, and I felt it rather than heard it. Remember them. Everything went black when I woke. I was lying just off the main trail, back where I'd started the morning before. My pack was there, my gear was intact, except for the map, which was gone, and my watch, which was cracked down the face and frozen at 4:44. I didn't stop until I hit the parking lot and saw my car still sitting there, untouched. I didn't look back. I drove 6 hours straight back to my sister's house and didn't sleep for 3 days here. The thing. A week later, I checked Reddit, just scrolling mindlessly, and found a thread about weird trails in California. The top comments: someone describing a trail near Lobo camp that didn't appear on any map. They described the smelter whispering, the woman, the cabin. They said she gave them something to a mark hand. When I checked my shoulder, I saw it's the same symbol, faint like a burn that never healed. Right, I don't know what I brought back. I don't know why she let me go, but I haven't been the same since. I dream of her every night now. Each time she's closer, I can hear the breathing again. Sometimes when I'm alone in the house, sometimes in the shower, sometimes under the bed. I know someday soon I won't wake up, not here. Anywhere. Be back on that trail, and this time I think I'll stay. It's been 6 months since I left that place, since she marked me, since I woke up on the trail like none of it ever happened. But I know better now. She never let me go. She just gave me a head start for the first few weeks. I didn't notice anything beyond the dreams. They were bad, but I've had bad dreams before. I chalked it up to trauma, stress. I kept telling myself it wasn't real. But then the dreams stopped feeling like dreams. They became vivid, tactile. I could feel the dirt under my fingernails, could taste the rot in the air, could feel the trees breathing. Worse, I stopped dreaming about her and started dreaming as Harry could see through her eyes. Hear the voices that lured people in, taste their fear when they entered the forest. It was like being trapped in a movie that kept playing on a loop, except I wasn't watching, I was acting. I started hearing whispers during the day too. At work, in traffic, when I'd close my eyes to blink, a flash of the cabin, a flicker of the symbol, the whisper. Tried everything, therapy, church, even walked into a police station once, with no real plan, just stood there, thinking maybe if I told someone, they'd understand. But how do you explain that something ancient and angry lives in the trees? That it waits for hikers to find a trail that shouldn't exist, and when they do, it feeds. I thought about going back, about burning it down. But then I read something on a thread that stopped me cold. Someone else had found the cabin they described. The same smell, the jars, the book, the woman, but they said something new. They said the book had more pages now, that it showed other faces, and one of them was Minai. Deleted my Reddit account that night. Burned every piece of camping gear I had tried to erase the symbol from my skin. Nothing worked, the mark just came back. Started losing time an hour here. A day there, I'd wake up in strange places. Once on a trail 20 miles from town, with no memory of how I got there, my boots caked in black. Moss, my hands, dirty my phone, always dead than last week. Something changed. I woke up in my apartment at 4:44 a.m., the same time as the watch. I'd found cracked that day in the woods. The air smelled of copper, of pine, and the walls were breathing. Mean that literally the dry wall pulsed in and out like lungs, and from under my bed came the slow, wet rasp of something breathing back. I didn't check, I didn't move, I just waited, frozen in place, for what felt like hours. Eventually, the breathing stopped, and something whispered in my head again. She's ready. I didn't sleep after that. I just sat staring at my door, waiting for it to open on its own, but it never did. Instead, the trail came to May, stepped outside at sunrise, and my street was gone in its place. Forest, not the kind I know. This one was older. Wrong, the trees were the same kind I saw before. Leaning, twisted, covered in that thick, veiny moss that always bleeds when you touch, intend. There was a path right in front of me, cut clean through the underbrush like it had always been there. Tried to go back inside. The door was gone, just tree bark, pulsing slowly like a throat so. I walked. What else could I do? Each step felt heavier, like the forest wanted me to feel the weight of every footfall. The birds didn't sing. There was no wind, just the whisper closer. The smell was thicker than ever, meat left out to rot in the sun. And something else, something electric, like the air before a lightning strike. I walked for what felt like hours. Baby days. There's no sense of time here. The light never changes. Always that dull reddish hue, like blood through gauzy. Eventually I found something, not the cabin. A clearing in it, a ring of stones, and inside that ring, a woman, not her, not the one from before. This one looked like me, same height, same hair, same scar on my wrist from when I fell off a bike at 11. Sheath turned, and I saw her face. It was mine, but wrong, like it had been worn too long, cracking at the edges. Her smile twitched like her mouth didn't understand the shape. She spoke, but not out loud. She chose you belong to her. No, I tried to speak, to scream, but she reached out and placed one finger on my lips, and it felt like fire. Everything melted, my skin, my thoughts, my name, my wasn't Ray anymore. I was her, not the woman in the forest itself. And now, wait, if you're reading this, you probably think it's a story, something made up. Reddit, creepypasta. But if you ever see a trail where there shouldn't be one, if the forest falls too quiet, if the air gets cold, all at once, didn't walk, didn't even look too long, because the woods remember, and now so do I, and I'm hungry. If you're hearing this and you're even thinking about hiking the West Hollow Trail just outside of Ten Sleep, Wyoming, turn around right now. You won't find it on modern maps anymore. Not because it was erased, but because something out there doesn't want it found. I was 19, just done with my first year of college, and we all wanted to disappear for a while. Me, Casey, her brother Tom, and Jenna, my roommate, who kept sleeping in my bed but never talked about why we had camped for 2 nights at a standard site, full of noisy families and mosquitoes and the smell of propane. But Casey wanted something different. She always did. She pulled up this thread from an archived hiker forum. Old, dead, last comment over a decade ago. Someone wrote about a trail past mile marker 17. Said look for a broken stone ridge and a wooden sign that says West Hollow Pictures. No replies, just one chilling comment. Below it, you going past the stone. Bring a bell. We thought it was a joke. Even said it out loud in the car with nervous laughter. Still, we packed light and headed out early. That forest road had no signs, no other cars, just gravel under tires and trees pressing in on both sides like they wanted to listen. Then we saw it, the marker 17, barely standing, and there it was. Just like the post described, a crumbled wall of grey stone, like fallen teeth, and a rotting plank of wood nailed to a leaning post. West Hollow carved into it with shaky hands. The trail behind it was narrow, overgrown, not something hikers use anymore. But it was real once we stepped beyond that stone. The noise stopped, not like peaceful. I mean stopped. No birds, no insects, no wind, like walking into a closed room, underground. At first we joked. Casey said it was probably just the altitude. Tom shrugged it off. But then we saw the first one, a rabbit lying on its side, eyes wide, neck twisted all the way around. No blood, no wound, just wrong. Jenna flinched. Tom said nothing, and Casey snapped a photo. We should have left right then, but we didn't. Every 100 steps we found more. A bird with its wings bent backward, a deer with its hooves pointed in, a fox halfway into the brush like it had frozen mid-run still. We kept walking, drawn deeper like something was pulling from under our skin. We reached a clearing by late afternoon. The trail split around a blackened fire ring. Rocks were still warm. Someone had been there recently. We set up camp even though it felt like the trees were leaning closer. Every hour, watching, waiting. That night I heard bells, not from around us, not carried by wind, but deep in the trees, muffled, distant, hollow like they were underwater. Stepped out of the tent to pee. That's when I saw it, something tall, standing among the trunks, thin like a man made of wires, not moving, just facing me. Didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I looked once, then it was gone. The next morning, Casey was gone to her tent, was zipped from the inside, boots still inside, flashlight beside her pillow, but no sign of hurting. Shouted until his throat cracked. We searched in circles, called her name so many times it didn't sound like words any more than. Jenna found the tree right next to Casey's tent. Something had been carved into it freshly, deep into the bark. Just one word, Desti Elo reading. It made my stomach twist, like my body knew it wasn't just a word. It was something else, a signal, a command. We argued. Tom wanted to keep looking. Jenna wanted to call for help. But we had no signal, no trail markers, no proof which way was in or out. We chose Depri. Don't know why it felt like we didn't have a choice. The deeper we went, the more the forest changed. Sunlight came from the wrong direction. Moss grew on every side of every tree. Birds moved in reverse. Time fractured wed. Walk for 10 minutes and 2 hours would pass. Or maybe the other way round. Tom started mumbling to himself. Jenna kept stopping to look over her shoulder. And I felt like something behind us had started to breathe in rhythm. With me we found Casey's boot that evening perched on a branch too high for her to reach. Inside it was a folded scrap of shirt, the one she wore when we left the cairn. Folded it, and written inside in shaky black smears was a sentenced call. Thempton cursed and threw it into the trees, but I picked it back up. Something in me didn't want to let it go. That night we didn't light a fire. We just sat close and waited for morning. Though I don't know if morning ever came. We heard something walking around our camp. Not an animal. Something heavy, soft-footed, wet-breathing thin. The laughing started at first. It sounded like Casey, a soft chuckle, familiar but wrong, like someone who'd heard her laugh once and tried to copy it with a different mouth. Jenna cried. Tom just kept whispering her name. Like if he said it enough, she'd come back with it. Didn't sleep, just counted each breath, waited for the sun. But when light finally came, it didn't bring warmth only. More trees and more silence. We tried to leave, backtrack, go the way we came. But the trail wasn't there anymore. Every direction we chose, the trees were different, closer, rearranged, like the forest had changed the map the moment we stepped inside. Then we found the cabin, old, buried half into the hillside, roof sagging, door open like a mouth inside. A bell hung from the ceiling, not tied to anything, just floating. Jenna reached for it. I grabbed her wrist, begged her not to, but her eyes were glass, empty. She touched it anyway and everything went black. No fade, no sleep, just gone. Like falling into a place that didn't believe in time. When I woke up, I was alone. No cabin, no Jenna, no Tom, just forest and footsteps that didn't belong to Methia inside now. Every breath I take, every word I speak, I can feel them listening from behind my teeth. If this finds you, and you find the trail, don't go near it. Tanned, if you already heard the bells. It's two-letter part of the stillness now. I kept walking, had to. Every tree I passed looked familiar, but also wrong. Like the forest had copied itself too many times and forgotten the original. My legs didn't hurt. My throat was dry, but I didn't feel thirsty. Even hunger was gone. I should have been tired, but I wasn't. And that scared me more than anything else. I saw something hanging in a tree. Cloth, red flannel. It was Jenna's sleeve, torn, dangling from a branch 10 feet up. No way she got it there herself. Underneath it, a small pile of stones, each one smeared with what looked like rust, but smelled sharp, metallic, old blood, dried into earth. There was something written in the dirt beside it, crooked, like it had been scratched by trembling fingers, or something that didn't have fingers at all. It said, "Ring and become." I didn't want to know what that meant, but I was starting to understand. I found Tom's watch next, lying beside a fallen log, not broken, still ticking, but the hands weren't moving right. They spun backward for a few seconds, then froze, then twitched forward again. That's when I realized I hadn't heard a single natural sound in hours. No wind, no birds, no insects, not even my own heartbeat, just footsteps behind me that stopped every time. I turned around, tried screaming again, just to make noise, to hear something human. But my voice didn't echo. It just fell dead around me, like the trees swallowed it before it could reach the air that night. I didn't make camp. I just sat against a tree and stared into the dark. It stared. Buckeye heard the bell again, not loud, not near, just a soft chime somewhere far off, but not in any direction. It came from below, and then I saw the shape again, the tall one, longer than a man should be, limbs that bent like branches underwater. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth head and a neck that swayed side to side, like it was listening for. It didn't walk. It hovered, glided, just beyond the edge of the fire. I never lit one. I closed my eyes. I saw Jenna standing in the clearing, barefoot, mud to her knees, her face blank, eyes open too wide, lips moving without sound, sure. Mouthed something again and again, like a prayer or a warning or a promise. I couldn't tell. I tried to read her lips, let them inlet. Innie woke up with scratches on my arms. I couldn't explain, not deep, but they're fresh, stinging that morning, if it was morning. I found the second cabinet was smaller, almost sunken into the ground. Door, missing no windows, just a hole where air moved the wrong way inside. There was another bell, this one lying on the dirt, cold, heavy, iron, but it hummed, like it was breathing beside it. A note nailed to the wall, with a bone written in old ink, shaky lines, barely legibly. You ring the bell, they see your view, answer. They enter if you run. They follow if you stop. They feed. I didn't know what to do anymore. Every path was the wrong one, and staying still felt worse than dingy. Left the cabin and followed the wind, even though there wasn't any end. I ended up back at the first clearing. The one where Casey vanished. Her tent was there again, set up, neat, untouched. Even though we'd packed it 2 days ago, stepped inside, everything was exactly where she left it. Flashlight, boots, a granola bar on her sleeping bag, and her phone still powered on. One message on the screen: "Don't trust the sounds, they speak through them." Now my breath caught. I looked up, and the forest was silent, except for the bell this time. It was close, just beyond the trees, and something was ringing. IT stepped out slowly, scanned the clearing, saw the figure again, but this time it looked more like Casey. Her face, her hair, her shape, but frozen to still, as if someone had worn her skin like a jacket and didn't know how to move inside. It raised a hand, and I turned and ran. Branches tore at my arms. The ground shifted beneath me. At one point, I swear, I was running uphill and downhill at the same time. Something chased, not fast, but constant, like a wave behind me that would never slow down. Then I found Jenna sitting on a stump, head down, hands in her lap. When I got closer, I saw she wasn't blinking. Guy called her name, nothing. Her skin was gray, like tree bark, and her eyes were moving, side to side, too fast, like they were trying to escape. She whispered one word, so soft, I had to lean close to hear it stilled. Then her mouth opened too wide, like it split at the corners, and something came out. Not a sound, not a scream, just air, but it wasn't hers. It was colder than the forest, heavier than breath, and it whispered into my ear from behind her lips, you belong here. Now I backed away, couldn't breathe, fell onto the ground and crawled backward, plea through pine needles that turned black under my hands. Then she was gone. The stump was empty. The air still moved, but it didn't carry her scent. I stayed there until my legs stopped shaking, until the sky turned the wrong color, and then I stood and walked again. That was 2 days ago, or 5. Maybe 10 times. Not real here anymore. There, inside the trees now, watching through knots and bark, listening through the roots. When I sleep, I dream in Belsman. I wake, I forget what I am. If you find the West Hollow Trail, and you think you're brave, you're already theirs. They hear your footsteps before you take them, and they're waiting, always waiting. I haven't seen my own reflection in days. Maybe more. I found a stream yesterday, or something pretending to be one. The water didn't move, but it mirrored the sky like glass eye. Leaned down to drink, and saw a face, not mine, not anyone I knew, pale, stretched, no eyes, and behind it, a hand on my shoulder. I fell back, and the water rippled once, then stilled, like it had never moved. At alley, haven't eaten in I don't know how long, but I'm not hungry. My body feels like it belongs to someone else. Now the ground beneath me doesn't make sound anymore, not even under my boots, just silent pressure, as if I'm walking across lungs that hold their breath with every step. Every now and then I see them, Agentum, Jenna, Casey, pieces of them, stitched into bark, smiling too wide, or not at all, moving without motion. They don't speak anymore, but I hear them in the creaks of the branches, in the pull of the wind that isn't wind. Their voices don't have words now, just intent. They want me to stay. The last trail I followed led me to a place I hadn't seen before. A ring of stones, blackened, melted, half buried, and in the center a tree wider than a house, taller than any tree should be. And its bark was made of things that used to be alive. Don't want to describe them. I don't want to remember. But I will, because you need to know. Hands stitched, done into the wood, fingers grasping at nothing, faces pressed flat into the surface, screaming silently, teeth, bones, all fused into the trunk like it had grown from their death set. Its base, a bell, larger than the others, carved from something not metal, not stone, something that pulsed when I looked at it tanned. A voice not from around me, from inside me, said, "One thing you are." The last I ran. Again, for what it's worth. I ran until I couldn't remember how feet worked, until the trees stopped trying to look like trees and just became mouths with bark around them end. Then I woke up in the dirt sunlight, real sunlight, blinking through pine branches. Soft wind bird calls, the kind that belonged to the living world, was lying just off the shoulder of a highway somewhere. Pulled over and asked if I needed help. Couldn't speak, couldn't move. They called an ambulance. Doctors said I had no injuries, just dehydration, some scratches, nothing that explained the weeks I'd been gone. Tom, Jenna, never found, no trace, no record of our campsite, no footprints, no gear, just me and something inside me that doesn't echo. When I speak, don't dream anymore. Not really, not like before. When I close my eyes, I see chestnut outside, but within, as if I'm looking down a trail that starts where my spine ends. Sometimes I hear the bell soft, distant, not ringing, calling Guy. Haven't gone back, but I feel it getting closer anyway some nights. I wake up standing at the edge of the woods, not remembering how I got there, barefoot, heart silent, mouth dry once. I opened my eyes and saw something watching from behind. A tree. It smiled without skin end. Then it stepped back, slowly, like it was giving me time to catch up, I think. I brought something back with me, and I think it's waiting to go home through me. If you ever find a trail that isn't on the map, if you ever hear a bell in the dark, and it sounds like it's saying your name and answered and followed on T. Breathe until it passes, because once they hear you, once they know you're listening, you become part of the silence. To end silence never lets go.